Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Rain Taxi virtual event featuring Professor John Jennings and the amazing David Brame. I'm Eric Lorberer. I'm the director of Rain Taxi. It's a great pleasure to have you with us tonight. If you don't yet know about Rain Taxi, we are a nonprofit organization that advocates for aesthetically adventurous literature. And we do this in lots of different ways. Events like tonight's are one. We also, 4 times a year, publish a magazine full of reviews and interviews. We've done this for 25 years, so this is issue 100. And we're really happy to be celebrating that this season, along with all these great authors. Tonight, you can participate with us in a lot of different ways. After the event, I do encourage you to come over to Rain Taxi's website, poke around, maybe become a member. Tonight on your screen, you can certainly engage on the chat, share your observations and thoughts. We love seeing that. You can also ask a question at any time. I'll be checking that out and trying to weave in some of those with tonight's authors. And of course, you can buy the book. And believe me, this is one that you want. I'm so excited to talk about with it. Yeah. In a real quick way, I got to tell you that John Jennings is a comics creator and so much more. He has an Eisner Award, actually, for editing a critical work. He's well known to so many of us now for his work on 2 best-selling adaptations of Octavia Butler novels, and more to come. So that is really exciting. And he is the curator of Megascope, which is a new imprint devoted to speculative works by Black authors. The amazing David Brame, and I would say he earns that moniker from all the artwork I've seen, is currently based in Homer, Alaska, possibly even colder than wherever you're listening to this from. His work also runs the gamut, but he is devoted to comic art, sequential art, and Afrofuturism, scholarship of all kinds. The way he brings these interests into his medium is inspiring to me, and I hope we get into that tonight. So welcome to you both, gentlemen. And to start us off,
to be here.
I hoped that you could each give us a little bit of background, a little more than I just gave, especially how you got interested in comics, how you became a comics creator. What's your origin story?
Okay. You want to start, David, or you want me to start?
I guess you can go ahead and start.
What'd you say?
I said, I said you can go ahead and start.
Okay. That's what I thought you said, but I wanted to make sure. Okay. So I started. Well, my mom was the person who gave me my first comic book, which started like really. Little did she know that she started kind of an obsession that became like a eventual career path or something that I wanted to study or what have you. I grew up in Mississippi. I was born in 1970, so post-civil rights era Mississippi. I grew up in a very agrarian space, financially challenged, as they say. So, but still, though, we had, I had access to books. I mean, thank God for the local library. And I started reading super early. And my mom was a single mom, and I grew up with my grandparents. And so I was kind of in a very, almost like idyllic, weird, almost Steinbeckian space. I collected bugs and, read a lot and looked at the stars and, that kind of stuff. And so I was an early reader, and my mom was really excited about that. And she was at one particular point, like a literature major. And so she was always into like scary stuff and supernatural things and sci-fi and kung fu movies and, things that you wouldn't think that a mom would be into. So I was exposed to a lot of that stuff super early on, and was a really into images super early too, and I started drawing really early. And I don't know. I mean, I always loved comics. Ever since then, those particular early comics like Batman and Wonder Woman and Daredevil and stuff like that, it just made me want to read all kinds of comics. You know, so at an early age, I didn't really just read superhero comics. I read all kinds of things. So I was really into like Archie and Mad Magazine and all those things. And then I met this kid named Eduardo, who was his mom was dating my uncle Willie, who was also an artist at one particular point, and she made him give me like about 500 to 800 comics because he had a ton of comics, and she was like, give them to him, and he just changed my life because that was the first time I saw like stuff like Grimjack and like Eclipse comics, and it just really blew my mind. It was more than what I was seeing in the in the newsstands and stuff. And I wanted to be a comic book artist, I think, super early on, and then I realized I didn't have a way to get there, and so I ended up going to the military for a second. Was injured, ended up going to getting out the military, going to art school, and I was doing cartoons for the local paper. I worked for the local newspaper in Jackson, the Clarion Ledger, for a little bit, ended up going to grad school. And I think it was there in graduate school where I started kind of picking up that comics this is around the same time that Understanding Comics came out. So I was starting to understand that there was different ways to enter into the field. And I started studying comics and then curating comics. And then me and my friend Damien, who I've been working with for like 15 years or so, we started doing this stuff together. And he's the co-adapter, or he's the adapter really of, he wrote the script for like Kindred and Parable of the Sower. And so we just kind of segued into doing comics. And I think, I know that's a really rambly, I was trying to speak, it's more than that, but I was just trying to, that's kind of how I ended up, doing the things that I'm doing. And like you said, Eric, the first 2 Octavia Butler books came out, they were successful, and then Abrams gave me a shot at, becoming a curator for them, doing, basically assembling teams and putting together works by creators of color around speculation. And we're also doing like some crime fiction and also some, historical fiction as well. And I'm gonna stop talking. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess. So.
Thank you. Yeah. How about you, David?
Well, let's. I'll try to keep it brief if the connection holds. For me, comics started very very early. I actually got into them through cartooning, like cartoonists, Breathe or Bill Amend. I kind of actually liked the Sunday funnies, and Bill Watterson. He was like kind of like my hero growing up. Calvin and Hobbes are where a lot of my, I guess my visual choices came from, and then from there it built into other types of literature, and then eventually it kind of worked its way into comics, sort of the traditional comics that we think of with the floppies. So that was kind of my sort of nascent way of growing as a creator, and having that sort of using those kinds of building blocks for After the Rain, has been I would say sort of transformative. I've been sort of allowed within the within without the confines of having to deal with actually what I'm saying is, like Megascope, has, kind of let us just grow. We just kind of were allowed to use our imaginations as much as we want to. There weren't very many limitations. So I was able to use those those nascent things and apply them for After the Rain. And it's been kind of a wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's fascinating to hear those origin stories, and it leads me kind of to think that the next step is the collaborative step, because as you started to allude to, David, because in as much as an individual creator can be great, one of the amazing things about comics is it lends itself to being a collaborative medium. The first time I saw a work that you had done together, although I'm sure there are more, was in last year's Sanford Biggers book, Code Switch. And for those who don't know, Sanford Biggers is an incredible artist. And you all have a, rather than an essay, you have a graphic essay of sorts, kind of that I found to be not only a breath of fresh air in an art monograph, but really got to the emotional content of what he was doing in his work in a way that I thought was really special. So I was like, wow, this pair of creators works amazingly well together, and I think I was primed to see more of it, and just elated to see a fuller vision in After the Rain. So yeah, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what brought you together as collaborators, and how you work.
Okay, David, you want to start with that, or?
Yeah, like it actually started with a guy named Michael Harris a long time ago. There's an artist that we were sort of connected to, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, or I don't know how long it's been, but it's just sort of randomly we were connected to this one creator, and we happened to be close to each other. I was living in Toronto at the time. I was a professor at Ryerson University, and he was at University of Buffalo. So we were, 2 hours away from each other. And so Michael Harris was like, "Hey, you guys should, have a beer." And so we did. And then pretty much since then, like, we liked all the same things. So like the kind of comics we wanted to create, the kind of comics we were interested in, and what we wanted to do with the medium itself, kind of just blossomed. So we just did, we kind of did these small little projects together, and just kind of kept building and building and building, and they built towards After the Rain. I mean, we've done other stuff, and we just never got discouraged as we kept building. We tried some projects, like we had this one project called Jenny Death, that was it's cutting edge. It was cutting edge. It was beyond. I think the idea we were working with was, nobody was doing what we were doing, and I think people still aren't trying to tell the type of stories we want to tell. But I think now we have that ability. But we started there, and we just kept doing it until we're here now, After the Rain. So.
Right. No, I want to definitely echo that.
But John can probably talk to yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, Michael Lee Harris, we owe a debt of gratitude, and I still want to work with him on some stuff too. So yeah, like Dave was saying, we basically had mini bears, and then we also hung out at TCAF, which is an amazing comic arts forum. The Toronto Comic Arts Forum it's a great space downtown. It's a free event. Inspired me on some of my organizational stuff, and Dave is just like a really easy collaborator. You know what I'm saying? It's like his skill level is so high to the point where it's like he can do anything. So it's like, I can actually say, hey, I have this idea, and he'll send me like sketches that are mind blowing. I was like, okay, that's way better than what I was thinking. it's like I was thinking one thing, Yeah, and so we started out with we started with just like color tests, actually. Like he sent me some black and white stuff, and I was like, okay, well, color these, let's see what they feel like. And and he liked them, and I was like honored that he liked them. I was like, okay, well, let's just figure out how to collaborate together. And even though I'm not credited in the book, I did the colors on After the Rain, so it's just like the same thing with I don't know why I'm not credited actually now I think about it, but yeah, and so we were going back and forth about different projects, and yeah, with After the Rain, I mean, it was something that I had wanted to do with Nnedi a while ago, and we had I had actually started it a couple of times. I had like some breakdowns here or there, and what happened was I got super busy, and still wanted to do the book. And I reached David, hey, if we did like say 20 pages or so, just for tests, to kind of shop around to publishers, would you be cool with that? And he was like, that would be awesome. So we actually started doing that. We had some interest at different publishers, but then what happened was Abrams wanted to do the book line, and we both decided that it would be a better space for us to do it, where we could actually have a little bit more control over, what we were up to, and that's kind of like how it happened. Now, as far as like the Sanford Biggers project, I've known Sanford for a long time. We met in Japan actually. I was curating a show there in Kyoto, and he was one of the guest artists at this other show. And we have a mutual friend, and we actually ended up hanging out and, just stayed friends. And when he was doing this retrospective, he wanted to do some type of comic of some kind. Oh, no, the curator wanted to do some type of comic. And he's like, oh, well, you should just talk to John Jennings, right? And that's kind of like how that happened. And again, David saved my butt, because basically my wife was about to give birth any second. And I literally was putting finishing touches on the book like the day before my son Jackson was born. And I was like, look, this is all the changes you're getting. I'm so sorry. I love you. This has been a great project. But I literally am going to be in the hospital catching my son, hopefully, So yeah. But David made a really great experience. I mean, so I will say it's really like one of the most it's like call and response. It's like a visual call and response. It's like I'll send him something, he'll say, no, how about that? And I say, oh, what about this? And so it's like just this, it's like this back and forth that I feel like is very rewarding for both of us. So was that too long-winded?
Yeah.
I feel like I just really love working with him. So so that's like
No, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah,
And
I mean, agreed.
That's great. I think the reader can really tell too, because you can tell when collaborators are kind of fighting each other, and you can tell when they're in tune with each other and building. To use David's word from earlier. Another thing that struck me right out of the gate, I was just jumping for joy, is that this actually is an adaptation of a short story rather than a novel. And I've been saying for years, wow, more graphic novelists should adapt short stories. It's me, they lend each other so well, because it gives the story room to breathe.
Yes.
And I really felt that was an incredible advantage in this thing. It becomes novelistic. It just unpacks it in a great way. So even before I read a word, I just thought, smart thinking going on here. So how did you come to that? How did you choose that story? Yeah.
Well, so I've been friends with Nnedi for a while, probably like 12 years or so. We used to work at University of Buffalo, where I met David actually, and I think I just became a fan of her work. We were introduced by a really good friend of mine who was one of her students, who's also a really talented writer, Tina Fakreed. So she said, hey, you have to meet this woman. And so we basically, just really hit it off and decided that we wanted to collaborate on something, and then we ended up working together. And I just fell in love with that story because she doesn't write a lot of horror stuff, just like she used to love it. But I think after having Anya, her child, the girl who's now a giant, she doesn't really, it just really bothers her too much. And, she has been, she loves monsters, you know what I'm saying? And I think this is story is kind of like it's like when she's still figuring herself out, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's in this vein that she calls African juju, African jujuist, because it's dealing with like juju, the magic aspects of the continent. And the other thing is that the road monster that she created is also in Lagoon. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a proto Nnedi Okorafor story where she's figuring things out. And also the term Niger-American that she uses to describe herself, I think, is really part of the tension in the story as well. And it also, it starts like from the second, I mean, well, all we had to do is draw the first few pages and you're hooked, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like the kid's head wound, that's like the beginning thing. So how bad is this going to get? So it's like, it starts like really in the middle of the story, you know? So it's just, I just hadn't read a short story like it. And, you know, and I was like, I was just obsessed with it. So that's kind of like why I wanted to do it. And when I pitched it to David, I was like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, like I immediately loved it. I mean, I was always pushing. I was like, oh no, we got to do more of these. We got to get like 10 of them. Let's do 10 of them. Do like 400 pages or whatever. Is kind of always what I want it to be. But yeah, no, like this was a really easy collaboration. In the sense that you were kind of like vibing off of each other in terms of he would make something and I'm like, that's a beautiful idea, let me see what I can do. And then when he would add his colors, or when he would make suggestions about how action should work, we kind of like even coming up with just like how we did with the meta narratives and all those kinds of things. Sort of this just natural, easy progression of developing these visual ideas, and I think some really new ways of storytelling. So it was and After the Rain was great.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Eric, about.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that you're right about the short story. One of the things I lament about the longer narratives is that there's so much that has to get cut, and there's so much, and you end up with like these really full pages, and it's really more about like, can I get the whole story in? We're here, we got a chance to explore. We got a chance to expand the story with Nnedi's consent, a little bit, and. Yeah, I think it worked out, and it makes me. We are doing another short story actually with a large. I can't say who it is, but we are adapting another short story. Not us, but Megascope.
Sure. Well, that's great to hear, and I look forward to it, whoever it is. But although I do want to say, yeah, Nnedi Okorafor is such a special author. I'm jealous of people who were like yourself, who were hip to her earliest work. I didn't jump on till her first adult novel, Who Fears Death.
Who Fears Death,
which at Rain Taxi we instantly reviewed and have followed her work closely ever since. Really fascinating writer, and great to see the work being valued and expanded in this medium. So I think you guys have set this up so well. We'd love to see a few pages and maybe back a little bit of the story and of certainly David's panel compositions and how the color integrates and how this whole thing gets created.
Sure, I'm gonna go through this fast because I want to get some questions. But so basically, first, one of the first things that people ask is like, well, why is it called After the Rain and not On the Road, right? Because the original story is called On the Road. And I remember this like yesterday. I was talking to Nnedi about it. This is before we were putting together pages to shop around, and she was working out, and I, because I remember she was on the treadmill, and I was like, "So this is what we're gonna do." And she's like, "Well, let's change the name of it to." And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, I want to disambiguate it from the Jack Kerouac story, the novel." I was like, "Oh, okay." Little did we know that there was a really famous manga called After the Rain. So what are you gonna do? Anyway, so yeah, so I'm like, all right, yeah. So but it does work out because After the Rain as a title, is kind of hopeful, but also kind of foreboding too. Which is very much what the story is. And then David and I went through so many cover iterations. Oh my God, but I think that they did choose a really strong cover. Nnedi actually provided like the cloth, the magical cloth idea, which actually is used for the internal piece of the book too. I mean, she had a lot to do with how the book was conceived, which I was really excited about. And the designer that we worked out with, she actually did, the title is actually done by hand. It's not a font or a typeface. She actually drew that out, which was really, really awesome too. And so like we were saying, I mean, we jumped right into the narrative. So one of the things that me and David talked about a lot was like, well, and you can jump in at any time, David, if you want to about this stuff. We were thinking about like the panel work being the real world, and the gutters, the space between the panels being like the nether world, or like the spirit world, right? Or the bush, so to speak, in this case, and how the tensions were happening around her. The idea was that like a really good horror movie where the audience can see what's coming, but the protagonist can't, and so we were trying to play up the tension, the visual tension, and just really use like the things that comics do well that other media don't, and just some of the shot selection and stuff. So David, what was some of your thinking and some of the organic pieces you were doing here?
It's I'm highly influenced by some of the more creepy and surreal creators or artists and sort of art history, like H.R. Geiger. I mean, a lot of illustrators, mostly like Junji Ito, people like that. People who have who sort of wear this line of surreal, beautiful, and like creepy at the same time, but not quite gory. I never really want the work to feel like gore, impact, or that. I want it to be sort of emotionally evocative.
Yes.
You can think of things that people are naturally disgusted by, I guess. Like viscera, like roadkill. Things that are dying, even things like plants. Like if you see a dying or dead plant, you can find some beauty in that, but typically we associate those sort of dying, dead, crusty things as as decay. And you kind of like it builds you emotionally. So that's kind of like what we were doing. So it plays both within the narrative. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. No.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, it just plays with like people's emotions, I guess. Both with the internal narrative and what you're experiencing. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I was just thinking about some of the shot selections and stuff. Like, it's almost like in certain ways, like the encroaching of the landscape, on our main character Chioma, and how she's dealing with these ancestral spirits that she should know about, but she doesn't know as much about because she grew up in Chicago, and she's visiting her grandmother and her great aunt in Nigeria. And in some ways, like I said, it's a really great description of how Nnedi feels after our conversations about this, like kind of stuck at a crossroads between, as she describes it, on a fault line between, say, being, the daughter of Nigerian, immigrants, and then having a strong connection with the continent and going there a lot, but also, being kind of stuck in the middle to a certain degree. And I love the fact that she made Chioma an investigator. So she has this kind of really rational mind, automatically she's trained to be rational, but then you have like this chaos that is around her that she's not aware of, that we're aware of. And then what happens is, that night when everything like just crashes together. And I think that together we've actually managed to manifest that. We had a great, coloring team too, as far as like just our coloring assistants. Our assistant editor, Jasmine Joyner, she meticulously picked out different color schemes from the Nigerian landscape, from like the place where this story would have happened. And so we actually assembled like our color palette from the actual landscape and color palettes that they would be using in Nigerian textiles and things like that. So we try to make it as quote unquote authentic as possible as far as like the visuals. And yeah, but this is one of my favorite pages when the lizards, something that's so cute and kind of like, you know, interesting, you know, as far as like, they become very foreboding and very like terrifying later on, you know. And yeah, I'll end with this. So we also, you know, this is a new line of books. And our next book is Hard Ears. It's coming out in April 6th, actually. And it's kind of like Afro-Caribbean adventure story set in a alternative world that is based on Barbados. Across the Tracks, which is a 64-page like primer for younger readers, even though it's like a very serious subject. The Tulsa Race Massacre, drawn by Stacey Robinson and written by Alvin Ball. Matthew Clark and Nigel Lynch did Hard Ears. And Black Star, which is this wonderful like cat and mouse adventure story that's around these like really amazing protagonists that, you know, have to survive an alien planet and each other, basically. And that's by Eric Anthony Glover and Ariel Javelanos. And I am going to cut back to you guys. So,
thank you, John. That's certainly an exciting journey and a great peek into the future with those book covers, all of which look like I want to read them.
You're so good.
And thank you both for that description. I think you actually really got to a lot of what's going on here. And just to unpack it a little bit, maybe first I'll go to you, David. Just I was just blown away by how you conceptualized the panel and the page. You know, these are building blocks of comics, but you really have an innovative approach, and I'm sure together, as you're revealing with the conversations and the conceptualization of what this work would be. But these they're not backgrounds. I don't want to, that's not the right term for what's going on with how what is conventionally, you know, the gutter space in comics is totally reimagined here. And how have you been coming to that? Because I think that's just such a crucial element of how you do comics.
I think, John suggested we do something with meta narrative and do something with the gutter space, you know. And I think it started out as just these sort of, you know, small edge pieces. You can kind of see that even in the early pages there, I would say a little more reserved. But I guess John kind of was just like, yeah, go for it. So
And
like,
you went.
I just I went for it. It was just like I sent him a message and I was like, John, I'm going in, and in sort of hip hop speak, and that just means I'm gonna be putting a lot of work in, and I was just gonna. So coming to that, I was, I sort of described earlier as, looking at those kind of like that combination of beauty and disgust. And I was trying to marry both the narrative that was happening to what we were seeing in that gutter space. So like you saw with those lizard pages, I chose the idea that they were being encroached both by the lizards were kind of like invading Chioma's space. They were also invading the visual space for the reader. They were. You can't really determine where the edges are and where the actual panel is. In a lot of these panel orientations I'm choosing.
Yeah.
Outside of that, there's like a detraction of I'm trying to use I guess unconventional design choices just in general, breaking there's a fundamental type of academia to the way you're supposed to design comics. Simon Flood taught everybody how to make comics, right?
Mhm.
So with After the Rain, and with all Megascope comics, at least for what I want to do, I want to break that convention as much as I possibly can. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah. Oh, that is great, and that really clears it up beautifully, because your concept of how, invading the space of the reader, like this really active process, as compared to how we normally think of reading as kind of a passive process, I think is really great. I've been telling people, because I'm always trying to get new readers for comics, that anyone who like Jordan Peele's film Get Out would respond emotionally to this. It's got that same
That's good. That's high praise.
power. Yeah. Well, and I think it's well earned. So John, I'm curious too, because again, prior to this, I knew you more as the artist side of comics from the other adaptations I've seen. What's it like to take that, to take another role here and serve as the writer, the adapter?
That's a great question. So just to kind of, so basically, like with J2D2, which is like, me and Damien's collaborative unit. Me and David call ourselves Black Cats. We have these like little, almost like the Wu-Tang Clan. We have like this these little like nodes of creators or whatever. But Damien and I we work well as we're him the writer and I'm the artist. Sometimes we switch out depending upon what the project is, because Damien actually also is a cartoonist, and a letterer actually, because Damien lettered this book, by the way. He's a letterer on the book. So it was a little daunting, because first of all, like, this is the first book of a new line of books that I'm the curator for, right? And then it's like, and it's also my friend Nnedi's story, so I have to make sure that it's, a tight story, that it represents how she feels about the story. Like I said, we consulted her on all the changes that we made, and she got a chance to see everything. It was in progress and was giving her the thought. Even with me wanting to collaborate with David, I had to send her like some images of stuff we did before she liked it a lot. She was like, yeah, this is how it should feel. So, she was involved a lot with the process of making the book. So I wanted to make sure that was right. And then also, this is a big book for David too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've always thought that, David's one of the most talented cartoonists I've ever met, like storytellers I've ever met. And I love the way he thinks about the work. But, I also felt that the mainstream comic space wasn't necessarily the best space for him. I think that we needed a space like Megascope or some other like avant-garde space that can actually accommodate, the amazingness, right? So that's the kind of thing that needs to happen. And I just, so those are all the things that were weighing on me. It felt good that people responded to it so well, which I was totally shocked by. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a great story. And I think I really wanted the love that I had for the original On the Road story. And because I've been wanting to do this for a long time. This has been years. I mean, we wanted to do this a long time. As I was talking to you before, Eric, I've stopped and started on it many times. I have like drawings that I did, like full-blown concepts for it. And but honestly, I don't think that it would have been as good. It wouldn't have been the same kind of book. It wouldn't have been as fluid, without David on the project too, and without Damien, kind of shepherding it. And also without editorial support, from Jasmine Joyner and Charlotte Greenbaum, and Nnedi as well. So I think, it was a lot. And I don't know, it felt good that people responded to it so well so far. So,
That's wonderful that you praise all those collaborators, because the publication of a book is a collaborative process. And,
that's right.
And I love how you pointed out this is a painted title, and you see it, you feel it right away, you realize it when you pick it up.
That's right.
That, wow, handwork went into that, and that means some imagination went into that.
Every aspect of it. Oh, and what about you about to do the inside cover? Yeah, see Nnedi. See, okay, that was because that particular piece. That was because Nnedi told us about this magical the cloth that was, and I forgot the name of the society, but it's a magical society, or like a spiritual society in Nigeria, And then of course there's the fact that the paper choice, for instance, was a huge thing too, like the paper choice and everything. So if you look at like the NPR review of the book, it really kind of brought Charlotte to tears a little bit, because they praised the making of the book. Like editors don't really get that kind of praise that much, so it felt good for them to see like, yo, the paper choice and everything. And then there was this other review from Million Year Picnic, the comic book store in Harvard Square, and they were like, yo, this book itself is just an artifact. It's a beautiful artifact, so that's I mean, Abrams, their slogan is like the art of books. So so.
Yeah, they they did an immaculate job. Yeah, like I legitimately, like, once I finally received it from the deep dark north, like it was like my little beacon of light. And the first thing I said to my daughter, to John, was like, do you see how beautiful it is? I was like, and they did that with the shiny and the matte, and I was just like screaming. And it really is a beautiful artifact. So yeah, Charlotte and
that's great.
the design team and Damien and everybody, like, they all crushed it.
Awesome. Let me bring in a couple of questions from our audience. There's some great ones coming in, and it's a good point. It's a good time to segue to it. You almost started to go there with one of these, but I'd love to hear both your thoughts on why comics, and especially BIPOC voices in comics, are really important at this current moment. Socially, politically. Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I'm gonna be really brief. So, I mean, first of all, the history of comics in our society has been, kind of fraught with like, a lot of disdain, saying, as far as like just the comics medium. And you don't see, for a while, you didn't see a lot of like BIPOC creators in the mainstream, But I think like there's something about the immediacy of the medium that is very attractive to, to folk of color, as far as like getting our messages out. And the other thing is that, if you're talking about speculation and BIPOC creators, then that's something I think is a big deal too, because comics have a very like low bar for like getting into making comics. I mean, anybody can make a comic really fast and become a publisher. I mean, what I'm saying? You can actually go and make copies of it down at a copy shop, and you're a publisher, right? So that's the thing. It's just like a low bar of entry, and then, it's abstraction. So that's the way I look at it too. And it's also very portable, like it's a very portable medium,
Cool. Yeah. Did you want to chime in too, David, or? Yeah.
I think John's got that covered. I think BIPOC creators are they're, I mean this in the most loving way. They're the new zombies right now, and I think that's we're sort of capitalizing, I think, on that popularity, because what we do have is we already have the ideas and the creativity and the struggle, and the all that kind of stuff. So we just now have a platform. So with that platform, I think we're gonna try to keep making as many beautiful and new and interesting things as we can. Until we're we're the vampires or the whatever the next popular thing. But by that time we've created an institution of
exactly
a beautiful creativity. So.
Yeah. And kind of a related question, or still building from what you were saying, John, about the importance of the speculative imagination. And I know, I think one of the tenets of Afrofuturism also leads toward this is where does, how does that specifically feed into the future? So a couple of different questions asking this from different angles. One are, what other writers might you want to work on adaptations of? People are having votes for N.K. Jemisin, Malo Hopkinson. It could be a long list, I'm sure. And then someone else asks, for people just starting to get into speculative fiction and comics, where besides Black Panther should they start? And of course,
wow, those are all good questions. Start with the Megascope books, of course, right? And then, well, but another good place to start for the comics, and I'll go back to the other question, is probably Milestone. All the Milestone. So when you look at the original, if we're talking about Afrofuturism and not African futurism, which this book is in that particular oeuvre, so to speak. For Afrofuturism, I would start with Milestone Media. So because if you look at the original piece by Mark Derry from Flame Wars in 1993, the comics that he references are Milestone comics. Those are good places to start. In fact, now's a perfect time to me because Milestone is back. Actually, they're getting ready to relaunch at the end of the month, which is crazy. So it's a really interesting time. And then, of course, and there's some other places too. I mean, the Kindred book, is not to. Those are good spaces, but also if you want to do like illustrated fiction, then Tim Fielder's book, Infinitum, which just came out from HarperCollins, is a great place to start. Yeah, and those are some things I'm thinking. But what about you, David?
Yeah, I would honestly start looking into people who are crowdfunding independent artists. Creators like Greg Lise with It's Nana.
It's not Word Spider.
And Comics. Yeah, It's Nana the Word Spider. Yeah, so there's a lot of creators, Black indie creators right now. Just like you can treasure trove of them on Kickstarter and Indiegogo right now.
Speaking of treasure trove,
go ahead.
Black Comics Returns. I'm such a horrible salesperson. Yeah, the book that me and Damien did, that is a collection of about 100 Black independent creators, including yourself, David, are in this book called Black Comics Returns, and it has like a huge, it has a listing of all these great characters and creators, and also the conventions and their direct emails and stuff. So that's a good place to start, and it's a beautiful art book. That's curated by myself and Dr. Damien Duffy, and available from Lion Forge and Magnetic Press. So that's a good plot to start. As far as like
the mixtape one, G-Bag.
Which one? Oh yeah.
Comic book mixtape.
Oh yeah.
Art 16 bars.
16 bars. Yeah, by Jibba Anderson. Jibba Moeller Anderson. Yeah, that's a good place too. Yeah. 4 pages, 16 bars. Yeah. There's some really great collectives, out there now. And then, there's a bunch of like library lists. Like for instance, the ALA has a Black Caucus now, and so they have a listing every year of like their top picks for books. Those are good spaces too. There's a bunch out there, and there's a bunch of like Facebook groups and stuff.
Yeah, I
too.
think what you're finding out is that like there's some the creator or the space is already there, right? Like the amount of creators and all levels, all facets. We're talking about people who are making books, to people who are publishing them, to people who are lettering, drawing, writing,
distributing,
and now facilitating, editing, so the BIPOC creators are, it's already there. The industry is already there. So I'm glad that we're getting a chance at least to highlight a few of them. There's so many already.
There are so many. Now, as far as like people that I want to adapt, I mean, I have folk, I teach with Noel Hopkinson, so she actually, recruited me to teach here at UCR because we are also involved with the Eden Archive here, and so I definitely want to work with Nalo on something. Maybe I'm already working on something with her. I don't know, but there's all kinds of folk. Chip Delaney, Samuel Delaney, I would love to adapt something from. We're trying to get around to that.
Please do. Yeah.
Yes. We've been yeah, we're going to circle back around to some things. And then, you know, there's also really like great publishers.
Actually,
also
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What were you about to say? I'm sorry. Like,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm
Oh.
sorry.
Yeah, I've been actually into adapting things that are not like other short stories. So I've been working with a lot of indigenous futurists in Alaska, and so I've been with this a group called Wintermoot, and they've been working with I believe he's a Nigerian playwright named Amola, and he does weird sort of like Henry Dumas stuff, but he's a player. So we're adapting sort of his works, and putting it in an indigenous futurist space with my work as well. So like that kind of stuff is on the horizon as well.
That is just so great to hear. A great reminder that adaptation, transformation, and creativity come from and go towards all different directions, and that there is a lot out there and a lot more coming. We have to wrap it up for the day, but I hope we'll do this again. We have an audience that has been tremendously engaged and wanting to know more about your other works and so forth. And I'm just glad to be able to say that, as you've said now, that there is more in the works, more coming, and to ask people to keep in touch with this book and with your future work. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Out there, take care, everyone. Stay warm, and goodbye.